Okay, everyone, welcome to the November edition of Inside the Music. I'm so excited about the concert this weekend by the Fresno Philharmonic, and hopefully you will be even more excited at the end of the talk. We'll try to illuminate some of the things that you'll hear and experience and have a little bit of fun as we go along, I hope. The guiding question for this is, one of the composers, just to have in the back of your head, had something to do with a famous actress. Who might that be? Another composer did something that actually helped with the formation of GPS. So that's something to keep in the back of your head, and I'll reveal very shortly. So welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Very quickly, if you're interested, I was in Ireland recently. If you want to read a wonderful little article by one of the students at Fresno State who was over there and interviewed me there, it's on the College of Arts and Humanities website. And there's also, if you want to hear me talk about my latest album, I'm very lucky to be on this podcast, the Jazz Session with Jason Crane. He's a wonderful interviewer. So if you want to check that out, great. But the real bravo goes to our conductor, Rei Hotoda, who has been exceptionally busy in doing things out in the world that really exemplify what we're doing here in Fresno and demonstrate that what we're doing here in Fresno is actually going out and making a difference in the broader country. So the first big accolade is Rei, bravo. You get the Artist Award for the Horizon Awards of 2023. We're so happy for you and so proud of you. Very well deserved.
Thank you so much, Ben. What an honor. And I just want to thank this community, this organization, the wonderful musicians who really are instrumental in making all of the exciting things happen in this community and within our organization. So thank you to all of you.
And I love how you said that, and Lisa Weston in the English department did too. The everyone in the community was instrumental in making things. That was very good. And Rei, you just came back with our guest artist, actually, who I understand was there too, November 12th. You just came back from a really prominent symposium on women in classical music in Dallas. Can you, and that once again is demonstrating that what you're doing here with programming and the things you have planned even in the future for the Fresno Phil are setting the bar around the country. Can you tell us just a little bit about what you were doing there?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ben, for that wonderful introduction. Yes. So the symposium is led by the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. And I have to say, the Fresno Philharmonic, after my panel discussion about normalizing diversity and harmonizing inclusion, was on the lips of the CEO of the Dallas Symphony, the CEO of the League of American Orchestras. And what we're doing in this community is getting noticed. And I am just so thrilled about that because we're working very hard to really bring these living composers to our organization, to our community. But now it's being recognized across the country. So again, thank you to all of you for your support and excitement in this process, because this is my 7th season, Ben. Can you believe it?
Wow, it doesn't seem that long ago.
I know. And over the 7 years, we've really started to change the programming, and through our, all the different aspects of what we're doing as an organization, I think is really making an impact here, but also abroad. So I'm really thrilled that I was able to share our story to all of these people. I mean, they're coming from all over the country. From Washington, D.C., there was an artistic administrator from the Kennedy Center, to people from Texas, from all over the West Coast as well. So these big orchestras, the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra executive director was there. So all of these people are hearing our story. So I'm just really excited about that.
Well, we're excited about it too, not only because it's impacting it locally, but it's helping set a trend nationally. So bravo to you, and also bravo to the Fresno Philharmonic organization, because the concert that's going on this weekend isn't just a Fresno Philharmonic concert. It's part of something much bigger than that. Stephen, would you like to share what that is?
Yeah, so our concert this weekend is part of the California Festival. This is the inaugural first ever California Festival, which is a statewide festival of new music. This was a project that was conceived of by the artistic directors of the San Francisco Symphony, the LA Phil, and the San Diego Symphony to highlight the innovation, the spirit of new music that's so active here in the state of California. And so this is a statewide music festival that has a sort of crowdsourced curation. They just invited organizations who were able to perform a concert between November 3rd and 19th that had a piece of music that was composed in the last 5 years, were welcome to participate in the festival. And interestingly enough, we already had on this very program a new work programmed with our soloist Inbal Segev. So we signed up, and so what's great is they've created a wonderful website at cafestival.org showing all of the performances this month by over 100 musical organizations in the state of California, all of which feature new music. And also, too, that website will remain up at least for the next year, and they will be posting videos of various performances that happen during the festival, including ours. We will be also recording this weekend's program and posting the concerto performance on the California Festival website. So we're really excited about this. We're part of our identity as an organization, besides being a Fresno organization, is very much being a California organization, and that spirit of innovation that Ray was talking about and has brought here is very much in alignment with our fellow organizations in California. That there's a really great spirit of innovation and trying to do things in a new way here, and so we're happy to be part of that.
And thank you so much, Stephen. And as a composer myself, I'm just giddy seeing what you all are doing. So thank you. It's a fabulous season. Just to point you for the upcoming concerts, we have one after this concert. The next one is the weekend of February 3rd. Then, of course, I happen to know Tim. April 20th and 21st, we have saxophonist Timothy McAllister. Fabulous. I wish I had his technique. And then we end in June with the Masterworks. We also have a few pops coming up, right? Ray is going to be conducting Home for the Holidays, so I'm excited about that. And then it's wonderful that in the spring we get a mariachi group. And now let's talk about the concert that's coming up. So the very first thing that I wanted to talk about was George Antheil. His little moniker was the bad boy of American music, and a true bad boy he was. In fact, here's how bad he was. When he was in Paris, he had a little holster sewn into his jacket to carry a firearm, and he actually withdrew the firearm and fired it during some concerts if he didn't like how the audience was going to react or reacting. So he was maybe a little bit mentally unstable, but he wrote fabulous music, and I think his music anyway is very, very, very underappreciated, and I'm absolutely thrilled that we are performing his work. So I wanted to share with you just for 2 minutes. This is Guy Livingston. He's the leading scholar and leading interpreter of Antheil. He, as you see on this slide, recorded some works that he unearthed, and he ended up making the definitive version of those. He actually is a very good friend who, I'm going to pull up the video separately, very good friend who has been here to Fresno State several times working with our composers and with us. So let me just play a little bit of this for you to get a window into Antheil, because this will affect how you experience his piece.
And I mean, you heard that piece. It's it's 18 minutes long. There's a lot of repetition in that piece. But one of the cool things about Antheil is that he's always changing it slightly, which of course for the musicians is hell, but it does keep them awake because every bar is slightly different. So you really have to be focused and concentrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's different from Stravinsky in that way. Stravinsky was more concerned with the overall effect. He had longer and more powerful developments. And Antheil really is concerned with that kind of physical aggression, the whole physicality of performing. Stravinsky wanted his performers to be invisible, whereas Antheil, he wanted them to be very visible. You are the performer in Antheil's music has to sweat. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, there's some letters from John Cage to Antheil in the 1950s. Cage wanted to start a research center for electronic music, inspired by the French ideas.
Stockhouse.
And so he wrote to Antheil, asking Antheil for money, which was a dumb thing because Antheil was broke. So it didn't work out. But there's a very nice letter back from Antheil saying, I'm sorry, I don't have any money. But he had no idea who John Cage was yet. And when he died, he may have already heard of John Cage by the time he died, but by the time Antheil died, he was really entrenched in the Hollywood scene, and I think he had sort of lost touch with what was happening in new music, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Because I think he could have continued to evolve otherwise. So I think also it's a matter of time. I mean, most composers in their lifetime write music that's playable, and it gets played or it doesn't get played, but the stuff that gets played gets published. Antheil wrote music that was unplayable, and the stuff that was playable he played himself, and it didn't get published, and he fought with everybody. He was a difficult character, and he argued, and he had lawsuits, and it was just, he was constantly getting into trouble. He really was the bad boy, and he couldn't turn it off. He could never, say, all right, I'll make a deal with this publisher, I'll stick with them, and we'll publish 5 piano sonatas. Mm-hmm. What would happen is they'd publish 2 short pieces for children, and then he'd fight with them because he felt he wasn't getting enough royalties. And he just, he's like shot himself in the foot continuously.
Yeah, so he shot himself in the foot continuously, and that hyper aggression, and that he wants the musicians to be heard and to be seen and to be part of the action and to not necessarily make things easy for them, which is going to lead us to a guest that we have. But before we do that, I wanted to go over a couple of points about the piece and then introduce our guest in the midst of this. So you see my kind of lengthy outline here. This jazz symphony is fascinating because it's one of the first works to fuse jazz with classical music, but what was one of the first pieces also, Rhapsody in Blue, which we all know, which was commissioned by the band leader, Paul Whiteman. So Whiteman, that was such a success that he wanted to do it again. He was looking for a concerto or a symphony for a Carnegie Hall concert in 1925. So Antheil wrote this piece trying to get it performed by Whiteman in Carnegie Hall. But Whiteman looked at it and said, no, this is too modern, this is too crazy. So Antheil decided he would program a debut in Carnegie Hall himself in 1927. So another famous person in American music, W.C. Handy, was the one that was going to lead the orchestra. They did 25 rehearsals. He ended up bailing because it was too complicated and hard, and he gave it over to someone else. And it is very, very technically challenging. I'm going to skip the next part for 1 second. And this piece was really successful. It received a big ovation. People loved it, but Ballet Mécanique was also on the concert, and that caused an uproar, an in-concert brawl. So the jazz symphony was forgotten. But then he did an overhaul in 1955. So that brings us to this part, the technically challenging part. And we have a guest, this principal second violinist, who I found out travels a lot in Ireland too, and has been to one of the most beautiful parts in northwest up in Sligo, Caitlin McSherry. Caitlin, welcome.
Hello there. Thanks for having me today. It's really fun to be here. And thanks for talking about Antheil. It's fun hearing some more of the background on him too.
Oh, he really was a bad boy. But what about from your perspective? And Ray is a performer in this piece too, the piano, so we'll go to Ray next. But as a performer of this work, did any of what Guy was talking about ring true?
Oh, for sure. It feels like the way he was saying it changes every moment. There's a lot of similar threads throughout this piece, but you can feel there's always a new layer coming in and something else happening. All of a sudden you'll hear some sound effect from the other side of stage, and it feels like you're in the middle of like a bustling, you know, Manhattan street corner or something. There's just so much going on. And
are there dogs? Are there dogs growling? That
Sorry,
would be
yes.
funny. No,
My
that's
dog-
I think
like
if
very
Antal,
appropriate.
yes, I think if Antal were alive, he would include the dog.
He would include the dog. I'll play a recording in a minute. He includes crazier things than that. So we love the dog. So go ahead.
Well, we'll replace the air propeller sounds that got taken out, right? And the banjos. I have to say, I'm a little sad we don't have the banjos from the original edition. But Ray is sounding just absolutely fabulous on this piece. And it's such a wonderful blend of jazz and classical. And you can hear that it's at that point in time when music is shifting and it doesn't really have to have a label. It's classical and it's jazz all at the same time. And it's such a fun style of music to play. And not having a conductor, it's making everyone on stage have to treat it so much more like chamber music and listen across the stage and play with everyone and listen to things in such a more acute and focused way. I mean, we're always listening and playing together, but when you really have to, it really changes it. And I feel like it's really upping the game with everything else in the whole concert as a result too. And so it's really just so much fun playing this large scale chamber music piece. And yeah, Ray sounds fabulous. It's nice job.
Thank you.
Are you having to do in the violin section any extended techniques or anything like that? Or?
Not for us, actually, especially in the second violins. We're kind of just laying down the rhythms a lot of the times. We get to do it the nice, beautiful melody at the end, which I have to say reminds me so much of the old, the piece, The Student Prince. I remember playing that show for years, and it reminds me so much of The Student Prince at the end, you know, kind of like old operetta style. And no, we just get to lay down the rhythms and then listen to the great solos around the rest of the time. So we're kind of sitting in a great seat on stage, best seat in the house.
So Ray, what is your experience with the piece, and did what Guy was talking about resonate with you in any way?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It is the most difficult piece, the most difficult 5 minutes of my life. The amazing part of it is that, yes, it is a very physical piece. And there are moments where I'm slamming my whole fist down onto the piano in rhythm, in a stride rhythm. But it's just an exciting work. It's very much, it sounds like it could be the soundtrack to a Looney Tunes cartoon. You know, but this was written in 1925. And in fact, it's so interesting, this Dallas Symphony connection, because I have friends who play in the symphony and they just performed the 1925 version, which is twice as long and of course more instrumentation. And we're doing the 1955 version, but they were saying, you know, how are you going to play and conduct that? That just seems impossible. But we're making it happen. The rehearsals have been really fantastic. Again, you know, having incredible section leaders like Caitlin really is helpful. And there's some incredible solos from the brass. You know, you'll just be amazed. But I had to tell the orchestra to kind of swing with it, you know, because they're so used to playing quarter notes, the full length of quarter notes, like we would do in Beethoven, in the Beethoven Symphony. But I was, you know, really trying to get them to dance to the music. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, and actually that just brings up to mind, and maybe Caitlin or you could, I've never talked to you about this, but when we talk about swing rhythm in jazz, most people, like academics, would say, oh, it's like you're in 12/8 da 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 da, but that's like massive square, right? So in my experience, and the way I learned how to do it years ago, is you have to ghost certain notes, and ghosting means you just shadow it a lot. So if I sing a jazz line, so I'm really ghosting, meaning I'm just barely doing some of those lower notes, but the higher notes I'm bringing out. Is that sort of what you're talking about with swinging with the orchestra in this piece, or does that not apply in this piece, the ghosting?
Absolutely. I wish I had those words and that scat that you just did, because that would really help the orchestra exemplify that kind of swing. I was just telling them to play the eighth notes a little shorter and a little bit more articulation on the quarter note downbeats, you know?
I'll do a scat solo. No, that's
fantastic.
So, Caitlin,
Anyway.
I have heard, and then you can add anything, and we'll move on to the next piece. But in my experience as a composer, it's actually, I've tried to write some swing things, especially for strings, like string orchestra before. Like I remember I was at the Aspen Music Festival as one of the composition fellows, and I wrote this thing for a string quartet that I thought was so cool and so hip, but I didn't articulate the style clearly enough to the string quartet, so it sounded horrible, and it was on me for not knowing how to do it.
You know, and
How does Anthile do it in the part?
you know, he tries with different amounts of, he puts accents at different times, and I feel like something that often works well for classically trained musicians, kind of talking about where the weight is and where the release is. Sometimes that can be more successful. And this is a big thing in traditional playing, you know, because I play so much fiddle music and I play a lot of Baroque music too. And with all of that, there's so much about the swing, and there's different amounts at different times. And when you write it out with triplets, it's too much also, right? You know, so a lot of times it just has to be demonstrated, because it's really hard. A lot of times I'll just see on a chart, it just says light swing or moderate swing, and often things like that work a little better. I remember there was when I did a bit of Baroque stuff when I was back in DC, I worked with Ken Slowick at the Smithsonian quite a lot, and he liked to be very specific, and he would write ratios of it's a 5-4 and a gall, or it's a 2-3 this time round. And we'd always make jokes about it because they're so slight, the differences, but it does make you think a little bit more about, you know, where the weighting needs to go on the swing. But
Well,
you really got to feel it. You got to feel it. You got to sing it.
I want to stay on track, but I can't help but ask you a question, since you said you're an Irish fiddler.
Yes.
One of the surprising things to me, not really being an aficionado or whatever of Irish traditional music before I left, I was absolutely shocked at how Irish traditional music actually swings just like American swing music.
It really does. Yeah.
And
I mean,
Donna Giddens, who was one of my fellow colleagues there, who just won the Pulitzer and stuff, she teaches there. And we were talking about it, and she was like, oh, yeah, you need to really research how the Irish that came over ended up mingling and musically playing with the you know, Jim Crow African Americans, and that really is, you know, the swing and jazz really came from Ireland.
and you know, so much of it, so many Irish people were involved in like the New York scene in the 1920s with like that big bandy style and swing. Like a lot of those sounds and effects were coming from Irish players that came over as well. And so much of it just goes back to natural singing and dancing. So much of the music is dance music, and just like how you're going to feel it organically in your body. And you know, when something's completely straight, it often does not feel very natural. So much of it is making it have that organic feel, like it's alive, right?
Well, we'll have to talk more about that over coffee sometime.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to play just the briefest little excerpt of George Anthile's Ballet Mécanique, which is the piece, oops, that's the wrong window, which is the piece that, where is it? It's here, that was on the concert that overshadowed the Jazz Symphony, so that you can hear why it overshadowed the Jazz Symphony. This is actually a film, 1924 film, and this is the score which Anthile did. So just see what you think of this score. So can you see maybe why they were talking about that piece and not the Jazz Symphony? Yeah.
Well, Ben, you know, that was my first introduction to George Antheil. I was an undergrad at Eastman, and they asked if any of the pianists would be interested in playing that Ballet Mécanique with the film.
Did you do it?
Of course, I had to raise my hand. And what's interesting is that it's for 4 pianos and percussion. And I was just amazed. That was so inspiring for me as an undergrad to do something like that. And that film is incredible. And that's avant-garde even now.
Yeah, it is. I love it. Bravo to you. And is this correct? Are you you're going to do this with the ACO in New York, right?
That's right. So this the Jazz Symphony is on a program I'm conducting with the American Composers Orchestra with my debut at the Carnegie Hall in New York City in March.
Another bravo in how things from Fresno are getting big everywhere, even in Carnegie. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Conduct for the Fresno Philharmonic. I love it.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, so moving on then to, I think, here's was the question I asked at the beginning. So Antheil got in with Hedy Lamarr, and they actually got a patent in 1942 for a secret communication system that eventually became a constituent part of GPS, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth technology. Isn't that an interesting little side note? So next we go to an absolutely wonderful, relatively new piece of music by British composer Anna Klein. And I love this piece. It's based on each movement is one of the lines of this Rumi poem. And having edited my scores, if you look, Ray, in the instrumentation and stuff in the score, this phrase is put two different ways in it. It's kind of fun. That even Boozy and Hawks makes mistakes in their editing. I love it. It makes me feel better about my scores. But what a wonderful poem. Dance when you're broken open. Dance if you've torn the bandage off. Dance in the middle of fighting. Dance in your blood. Dance when you are perfectly free. And we have this amazing cellist who premiered the work and is from Israel, has a connection to Marin Alsop, which Ray does too. That was your mentor, right? The conductor,
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yes. And what's interesting is that Imbal has been commissioning a lot of living composers to write cello concertos for her. So this is one of multiple cello concertos that she's commissioned.
Yes, and for those of you near Fresno State, here's a little inside scoop. Thanks to the Fresno Philharmonic, at 1 o'clock today in the music department in the concert hall, she will be giving a master class to the cello students, and you could sneak in if you want to sneak in, right? That would be okay, wouldn't it, Stephen? Yeah, I think so. No one's going to tell on you, okay? So it's wonderful, and I love her cello playing. I was going to play this for you at the piano before we listen to the piece. Last night I was kind of doing a deep dive into the score, which Stephen very generously sent to me. And what I realized in this app, it's like so many things. Like things can be really complicated, but the solution can be really simple. And they can be beautiful, but underneath that, there's something just fundamentally simple, right? Like E equals MC squared is actually very eloquent, but it defines so much, right? And so this is a reduction of the beginning, and I know it's messy, but I did it at about 1 a.m, of a reduction of the opening of the piece. And I just wanted to point something out, and I was going to play it for you on the piano, but it's not working with the Zoom. This interval right here from A, those of you that read music, to F sharp, that is an interval called a perfect fifth. Da, 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 a perfect fifth, okay? So if you notice this entire thing that repeats 5 times in the strings, here you have a perfect fifth, and then look, you have a perfect fifth here. Last time we talked about the overtone series, and that the perfect fifth interval, the ratio of 2 to 3, is actually how we hear and perceive fundamental frequency in our brains. It has to do with cognition of music, okay? And if you'll notice, Anne Klein takes this perfect fifth and then just drops it. And guess what? This gets dropped in equal amounts. So these are in parallel motion. There's parallel motion here of 2 perfect fifths, okay? Then what I find interesting is this goes back to the original. Then this goes down in contrary motion. And you get this neat rub then between this note E and this note F. So you get, I'm going to have to transpose that, right? Okay, so E is F sharp to G. So, and then do, di is what you get, okay? Not that high, but I have to do that on the saxophone for you to hear it on Zoom. So still two perfect fifths, but they're in contrary motion. Then this one goes up while this one goes down. Then this one goes down. This one goes up. So you get this wonderful contrary motion. And then this chord is like a piece of heaven because this stays the same. That's called oblique motion while you change the context of this perfect fifth. So this happens 5 times cycled through. And it's actually really simple, but those perfect fifths make this resonance that's just drop dead frickin' gorgeous. And then guess what? We go to the B section. This is rehearsal letter E. And we still have, see these brackets? These are still perfect fifths, but they're all moving in parallel right here. At the top, those of you that are musicians, I can write in modern jazz chord symbols to the chords made out of these pairs of perfect fifths. So my guess is that Klein was sitting at the piano one day thinking about the poem, started messing around with perfect fifths, and started moving 2 perfect fifths like this and finding what combinations ended up sounding good and ended up making it express what she wanted to express. And it's so fun that when she did that, she ended up with stuff that I can put into jazz chords, and I could have a jazz band play this. Absolutely no problem. So you might not hear this piece and think, oh, well, this is one of the jazz pieces in this season that we were talking about. This was absolutely, positively, highly impacted by jazz harmonies, 100%. And I wish so much I could play that for you on the piano. Let me erase it, and maybe you can take a screenshot, and those of you that are keyboardists or know someone who is, have them play this. And the little red things up here, the melody and how they relate to the harmonies and stuff, and we won't get into that deep dive, but go ahead and take a screenshot because this is massive cool, to me anyway. So it does have jazz chords, and it has, we call it quintal harmony, meaning based on fifths. She also does harmonics. Caitlin, do you want to talk about what portamentos and harmonics are on a string instrument?
So a harmonic, it's we can put our finger down with very light pressure and we get all the overtones to ring, and it's like the most crystalline, pure sound you can get out of the instrument, similar to playing an open string where it rings really well, but it's a much higher pitch. And we can go about halfway up the string, and that's the most common one we use. They're all over the place, and it just kind of sings out above everything else in this super pure tone. And they're used quite a lot in the cello concerto in effective ways. And then the portamenti, that's just like if you you're connecting your notes, so it feels very vocal when you're singing it. It's used again in specific moments to just give it this vocal quality, and it's so effective and so emotional the way it's used. It's really great. And then she's very specific of when to use it and when not to use it. The antile also has slides, and they're used in a very different way for excitement. So keep your ear out for those portamenti or slides, we often refer to them as, and the ways they're used.
Well, since we're running out of time, let's go ahead and listen to just the very beginning of the piece. But the things to listen to, I don't know if you can or not, but see if you can hear the motions I was talking about, that you have these 2 perfect fifths that go down together. Okay, then this one goes up while this one, and they are moving like this. And then if you really pay attention, you can hear that that exact same sequence of harmonies happens 5 times over a melody that happens basically 3 times with slight variation with going up higher, right? And then you get a little contrast, and we'll just stop there. But here's the first movement, and we're so lucky that Ball is the cellist. The one you're going to see this weekend is the one in the video. This is Maren Alsop conducting. Now that sequence is going to repeat. Sorry, I have to point this out. What partly also what Klein does to make this so effective, notice that the cello melody is not moving when the chord moves. Okay, there's a delay. And I actually played it on the piano and was going to demonstrate that if I had moved the melody notes to when the accompaniment was playing, the piece sucks. It is terrible. What makes it work is that it's delayed and it's moving differently, and that creates tones that have tension that then get released. Okay, we call that in music non-harmonic tones. Cycle number 3. I'm going up high. Sorry to interrupt. The other thing, man, I could just spend 2 hours on this. That I love about this. Did you notice that Inball's entrance that time, the flute had the note, and then Inball started the note and grew out of the flute sound? So there's a point where you don't know what instrument it is, and then suddenly it emerges. Bach was great at that. He was fabulous at that. Great compositional tool. And in the entrance, her first entrance, it comes out of violin 1. They're both the violin 1's playing in E, and then ooh, she comes in, and you can't tell the difference. Is it the cello? Is it the violin? And then all of a sudden, it's the cello. Oh, I could keep going. I'm so sorry to stop that.
Well, and Ben, I just wanted to add that in addition to the strings in that first movement, Anna has the percussionists, and you'll see in the concert, look out for the percussionists in the back bowing the overtones. Yeah, bowing the vibraphone, so that you're hearing these pitches coming from nowhere, but it's part of the spectrum of the sound. It's amazing. It's brilliant work.
It catches me every time. I keep looking. It's like, oh, who's playing? It's the greatest sound coming out of nowhere. I love it. Yeah.
I love both Crotales. I love both Crotales. So you can tell that I get way too excited by pieces of music that I like. Okay, so it's just a crime to stop. So with Beethoven Symphony No. 7, you probably know this piece, but Wagner actually described it as the apotheosis of dance. So with the dance theme, and you may or may not know any of these movies, but these are movie placements where you will find the Beethoven 7. So what questions might you have for the next couple of minutes, either for me or for Caitlin or for Ray or for Stephen?
Well, I'm just going to jump in and say there are 5 movements according to the poetry, the 5 lines of the poetry of Rumi. But Rumi has always been one of my favorite poets, in that he's such a spiritual. There's always some sort of like humanity in all of his poems, and I feel like Anna has really brought in so many elements of that. So some of the other movements are a little bit jarring, but it's just this kind of human journey that we all go through, and I think this piece, especially right now, is just, it just brought me to tears when I first heard this piece. So hopefully it brings you all to tears, but in a good way.
Questions, comments? If you see me at the concert, I can talk all day about the analysis of this first movement. I won't do the deep dive right now.
Okay. Great. Well, if there are no questions, again, Ben, thank you very much for that wonderful analysis of both the Antheil and the Anna Klein piece. Yeah, these are both 2 really, really fascinating pieces that again, the Anna Klein piece is a new piece, but is really getting a lot of performances. But then the Antile is really something that has been ignored, and so it's great to be introducing it here to the Fresno Philharmonic audience. So
and the Carnegie Hall audience.
And the Carnegie Hall audience as well. Yeah, and it's interesting, as part of the California Festival, 3 other organizations besides us are doing music of Anna Klein, and none of the 4 organizations are doing the same piece. So Anna Klein is she's very much a composer that's on the move right now, is just doing amazing work. And so it's really great to introduce her to Fresno. So
it's lovely. Thank you all for being here. So nice to see you, and I look forward to seeing you at the concert.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben.
See you this weekend.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Caitlin. We have to have
Thanks,
some
Caitlin.
tea and talk about the Irish thing.
Sounds grand. We should definitely do it. Yeah. Thanks for having me. So wonderful to see you all.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.